brought together because Jim has proposed the idea of staging a forum where people who have suffered or had a very poor experience under the Trump administration so far can tell their stories. These stories to be shared with others as well as used, hopefully, for political gain in the upcoming elections and just making people aware that, wow, things are not good. A good way to reach out to partisan groups and people who may not be very aware, like many of my neighbors who don't seem to be too concerned about what's going on. So, with that, we will do introductions and then we will allow Jim the opportunity to explain in brief what's going on and hopefully get all of you to join in and help us brainstorm and help us plan. So again, Jean Mielke, Third Act Georgia. If you don't know what Third Act is, Melanie will certainly tell you as well, but it is a about a 4-year-old organization nationally with local chapters that I like to say is pretty much focused on those of us chronologically gifted who refuse to sit back and let the bad things happen. We're a feisty group, so welcome to that. My husband, Bill, will be taking notes. And before I go any further, does anybody have any objections to us recording this? Okay. Is it being recorded, Jim?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So, Bill, will you introduce yourself?
I'm also a part of Third Act Georgia. I do a few different roles there, communications and just a lot of just
Technology,
a handyman of all sorts. I do what's needed.
like note taking today. So, thank you. Tom.
Hi, Tom Weiss of Colorado. And I've been helping Jim with the project for since September and longtime climate activist. So thank you for your work with Third Act and longtime pro-democracy activist. There's nothing I would rather be doing right now than helping Jim with this project. So, and I've been mostly reporting and helping Jim with fundraising as well.
Excellent. We're so glad you could join us, Tom.
Thank you, Jean.
David, having the same last name as Jim, will you please explain yourself and your appearance?
Hi, David Lardner. I live here in Atlanta. I am Jim's nephew. Uh, I worked in tech for most of my career as a technical writer. I've done some journalism in regards to alternative fuel vehicles and eco-justice and so forth. But I am here because Jim asked me to reach out to people that I knew, and several people that I know have shown up here, so I am appreciative of that, and I'm going to do whatever I can to help this go as I have a little free time on my hands.
Wonderful. Welcome, and it's a pleasure to meet you. Audrey?
There we go. Hi, everybody. I'm Audrey Galix. Originally from Rock Island, Illinois. You can tell by my accent, I'm not from the South originally. I am retired a couple of years from AIB Network, Atlanta Interfaith Broadcasters, where I was content manager and produced a number of programs, interview shows where I interviewed mostly people involved in some social justice issues as well as the interfaith community. And I've gotten involved in some storytelling performance projects, both as an advocate and a teller, and the artistic director of the Atlanta Jewish Storytelling Festival was recently asked to also help with an interfaith storytelling festival that an umbrella interfaith organization hopes to plan for this winter. And I've got to confess, I reached out to Third Act Georgia last July. I had to go back in my email and see when that was. And a woman by the name of Kathy Crosby is involved. You all may know her, and we've gotten to know each other through the kind of the interfaith world, if you will. I'm also a member of a worship community that was started by the LGBTQIA plus community, and have become. I feel that I'm a straight ally in the community. I'm trying to think of what things that I'm involved with that would have some kind of impact on this program, the communities that I'm involved with, and I'm Jewish. That's a Jewish community, so
That's a wonderful
to be
list of
asked.
skills that we will be delighted to draw upon, Audrey. And yes, Kathy is our volunteer kind of welcoming member and everybody's best friend once they get to talk to her. So I will let you know. RJ, how can you top that?
Oh, I don't know. I'm a pediatrician and epidemiologist. I retired from CDC in 2016, and really since then I've been active with local. I live in DeKalb County. For the DeKalb Democrats, I've done a lot of work with them. Necessary Trouble is a national organization, and we started out with a couple of small groups that met, that were somewhat useful, but now we have a major group called Necessary Trouble that's I think now up to 1,500 members, very active, lots of projects, and I'm involved with a couple of those, but I think that's my main source of contact that could be useful for this project. I'm also a member of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, so that's another interest of mine. And my wife is also a CDC retiree, and she's very active in the group that was formed after the Trump second term started, when CDC was being dismantled. So she has a lot of contacts there. So that may be a source of people.
Excellent. Wow, you're connected to some key organizations, well known and well regarded. And one of our coordinating committee members at Third Act Georgia is Eric Mintz, who also has been protesting, a retiree from CDC who protests every Tuesday afternoon. So there's some good connections there. Thank you, RJ. Melanie, delighted to have you on.
Yes, I am delighted to be here. I am on staff at Third Act 3 days a week because I'm retired, so I don't have to work 5 days a week. And so I've been here about 3.5 years, and my job is to help coordinate working groups with national campaigns. And one of our national campaigns or strategies, I guess you could say this year is strategic narrative storytelling. So Jim's project fits in perfectly, and Jim's really active with DC Third Act. We have about 110,000 members nationwide, and are mostly split into working groups. And so this is really exciting to see Georgia taking the lead on this, because I think storytelling is going to be a huge, huge element of the coming elections. And also, I just incidentally hope that we can find some stories about data centers, because we're finding a lot of like bipartisan, nonpartisan, just, outrage at every level from every demographic about that issue. And so I think it's a really great way for us to tell those stories and bring in some maybe independents and Republicans who are supportive of public participation.
I can assure you that we have plenty of data center stories here in Georgia. The problem will be getting them concise and to the
Yeah.
point, opposed to taking over. So
Exactly. Oh, and my background is in lobbying and policy. I worked for Sierra Club for 30 years in DC, so that's where I came from.
Okay. And is it Hannady? How
Hanadi, Jordan. Yes.
Hannady? Welcome.
Thanks,
Please
Jean.
introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Hanadi Jordan with the Partnership for Public Service. I know Jim is pretty familiar with us. I'm not sure how much the rest of you are, so I won't do the whole elevator pitch, but we're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that's really dedicated to strengthening democracy and making government more effective. The primary ways in which we've sought to achieve both of those goals is through direct and indirect support to the federal workforce. So, helping to recruit young talent into government, kind of training federal employees at all levels of government through our Public Service Leadership Institute, helping to kind of improve the relationship of trust between the public and the federal government, which is harder than ever before, but also trying to tell the story of public service to the public. And this past year, when the Trump administration came in and made wide sweeping, non-strategic cuts across the board, we've invested more than ever before into that storytelling work. So I do a lot of different things that all revolve around supporting that piece of work. But I think what's probably most critical for this conversation is work I do around managing our Speakers Bureau. It's composed of former federal employees who have backgrounds in science sectors specifically. At least that's our initial focus for now. And we've really tried to prioritize recruiting folks based in Georgia, Texas, Ohio, Washington, and Colorado, seeing those states as having more movable middle members of the public. We do have a speaker in Georgia. She's coming to us from SAMHSA, help stand up the 988 hotline program. And with this group of speakers, once we've kind of recruited and met our recruitment goals, our goal from there is to create opportunities for speakers to engage with local communities in their area, to talk about their time in federal service, what is the work that they do, help to educate people in a way that's hopefully empowering and positive, lets people know about the work that government does that we all benefit from, that they're not always aware of, especially as we see the cuts slowly start to play out. Not everyone is tying those consequences back to the activities of DOGE or the Trump administration. So that's a big piece of our work that might be the most relevant for this call. So it's nice to meet you all, and thank you for letting me join.
Thank you all. And last but definitely not least, I will ask Jim to introduce himself. I will also ask all of you to put in the chat your name, an organization if you're representing one, and email and phone number, just so that we can pester you and make sure you stay involved in this project. So if you can do that while Jim introduces himself, and then Jim can launch into our next agenda item, which is kind of a brief description of this project so that we're all on the same page.
Sure enough. Thank you, Jean. Thank you all for coming. I've been a journalist much of my working life. although I've also worked for a few political advocacy organizations, and in a way, this project arises out of my journalism experience. The idea I'm here to talk about of public forums with everyday people recounting their experiences under the Trump regime arises out of a project called We Are Your Neighbors, which got going last year. It started out with just me writing the stories and posting them on a website set up by my daughter. Later, we found a nonprofit fiscal sponsor and raised some money from individual donors, hired several reporters. One is here, Tom, and built up a collection, as you'll see when I share my screen, if I do successfully, of about 60 stories of people whose lives have been upended in one horrible way or another. It'll take me a moment to share my screen because I have to get the other screen ready. Hold on. All right, I'm ready to share. I'm hoping you see a screen with a bunch of faces and the words, "We are your neighbors." If you
Yes.
do, the homepage of this site is a lot of different photographs and names and little squibs that are meant to stir your interest. And then on any given story, if you click where it says keep reading, it leads to an account of someone's experience under the Trump regime that runs anywhere from 300 to 800 words. And these stories cover a wide range of situations. This one, by the way, is one of the most awful of our several Georgia stories. And I will stop sharing now and attempt to find my notes again. We've tried to tell these stories in a matter-of-fact way without preaching or arguing. These people are your neighbors. Here's how they've been treated. That's the basic message. Now, we've concentrated on the story finding and telling so far, but now with the midterm elections looming, it feels like time to get on with the real work, which is the work of bringing our stories, these and others like them, to wide public notice, to the notice, above all, of some of the many Americans, even among the now anti-Trump majority, who are not yet properly alarmed. And to that end, we're proposing public forums with well-chosen, well-prepared, relatable people telling their own stories to live and virtual audiences of their literal as well as metaphorical neighbors. The thinking behind this idea comes down to 3 points. One, the great majority of Americans have an instinctive sense of fairness and common decency that would rebel at the inhumanity, the greed, the gleeful cruelty of the Trump gang if people fully understood it. 2, that stories more than abstract rational argument have the power to create that understanding. And 3, that public storytelling forums organized at the state or local level and with credible nonpartisan sponsors, not non-aligned exactly, but nonpartisan, have the potential to generate broad media and social media coverage, and to a far greater extent than is possible nationally, to reach people on the other side of the political divide. Not the 30% or so of Americans who may still be prepared to follow Trump wherever the hell he goes, but the folks we most need to reach this year, the swayable and the already swaying, the tens of millions who voted for Trump in 2024 without buying into his ugliest impulses, the tens of millions who didn't bother to vote, in many cases because they had come to regard the whole political process with disdain. That's our target audience above all. And what about the storytellers? We should aim for a wide array of them: immigrants, collateral victims of ICE terror, civil servants, veterans, farmers, relatives of Americans killed or maimed in the Iran war, people who live near projected data centers, for sure. Finding relatable, persuasive people is crucial, but I don't think we need to worry about that because there are just so many powerful examples out there. Our project already has several George people in its story bank, several more that I've identified, whose stories we haven't really written up yet. Originally, I was thinking of limiting this project to people who have suffered personally, but in pitching this idea around and getting feedback, I've heard suggestions for two additional categories of storytellers. One, which is an Hanadi's organization and work is highly relevant, is former government workers who, even if they haven't been personally wounded by Trump policies, can talk from real experience about the value of Trump targeted agencies like the CDC. And two, old folks, as old as I am and older, who can speak from personal and family experience about Social Security, the GI Bill, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, Medicare, all of the great accomplishments of the post-New Deal social compact that Trump and his crew want to repudiate. And by the way, Bill McKibben, the founder of Third Act, whom I got to know years ago at the New Yorker magazine, has been interviewing people who have that kind of personal or story to tell from long experience. So I've been out pitching this idea to various progressive folks, and I've learned that the general notion of storytelling as a resistance tool has wide appeal. But just the same, I've also learned that with so many immediate provocations to respond to and so many election year duties to perform, the idea of a public storytelling event is not an easy sell. A lot of people feel we just got too much on our plate. So I've concluded that the best way to convince people around the country that this is worth doing is to do it. So I'm here in the hope of eventually finding a Georgia-based organization, a nonpartisan group, to be the host or co-host of a pilot event and to help make it happen by June or July in time to validate the concept and build momentum for more such events in other states in the run-up to the midterms. Now, what does validate mean? The end goal is obviously to move people, and alongside all the other resistance work going on, to help spark what I'd say sum up as a national longing for social justice and genuine democracy. But that is not so easy to measure. What we can measure is media coverage, social media views, local radio and TV, things like that. I'm glad to say that my project still has a bit of money in its kitty and expects to have a little more. And to give a pilot event the best possible shot at success, we're prepared to spend $10,000 to cover expenses, including venue rental, video gear, and more than anything, publicity, pre-event publicity to generate turnout, and post-event publicity to generate media coverage. I would also like to pitch in funding to help create standalone videos of many of the people who appear at these events, which could be videos could include material from their outside lives and not just from the staged event. And I'll say one last thing. Out in 2020 and 2024, like a number of you, I'm sure, I spent time making phone calls and knocking on doors, especially in Pennsylvania, which, since we don't know how to have consequential elections here in Washington, D.C., we've kind of adopted Pennsylvania as our swing state of choice. And I may be out there again in 2026, but it can be, as I'm sure you've experienced, very frustrating work. And a lot of people feel that when they, hit the road after Labor Day, that they're knocking on people who they don't get a great reception, and often it's a perfunctory encounter. which has given rise to a whole school of thought about what's called deep canvassing. And I sort of partly think of this effort, this idea of storytelling forums as deep canvassing or even deeper canvassing that is not even just about getting people to think about issues, but raising consciousness, getting people to think about their basic morality. So I see this effort as a valuable consciousness-raising complement to all the efforts of a broad, decentralized, resolutely nonviolent resistance movement that is working in a host of ways to limit the destructive power of this regime and bring it to a decisive end as soon as we possibly can. And I would love to hear your feedback and whether you think something like this is worth trying, how it could be most impactful, whatever comes to mind. And that's what I got to say for now.
Reactions, please. And let's not worry about hand raising unless we start talking on top of each other. I would, first of all, welcome your positive reactions as to the benefits and the pros of doing this.
I think they're self-evident. I mean, storytelling is just the best way to reach people's hearts, beyond their heads. I mean, as someone who just believes in that as I love that expression as a resistance tool. I've never really couched it like that. What's kind of coming out for me is already thinking of organizations to partner with. And one of the models that I really like is Ariel Fristo's Out of Hand Theater organization, where they engage individuals to host theatrical performances with a post-performance conversation in homes across Metro Atlanta. You might want to check that out. And she's a friend of mine, very well accessible. And of course, here we have The Moth sells out every month. David knows this very well. He and I also attend something called Carapace, which is at Manuel's Tavern. And that generally gets a pretty good crowd as well. It's already well established, and he and I both know the coordinator of that, and I think she would be amenable to something like this. I'd be delighted to talk to the head of the National Center for Civil and Human Rights, Jill, or the artistic director of the Bremen Jewish Heritage Museum. She may be inclined to host something like this. I mean, there are just a number of museums and entities that I could toss into the chat.
Excellent. We're going to get to that in a minute. Can we just get a reaction, positive, the pros and cons from others of you on this forum before we start really discussing specific resources? Because you're
And I'll also say
got a wealth of them.
Georgia, Metro Atlanta has a fairly robust storytelling community. I think that their political leanings or members I know are it's not uniform, but I think that there might be some energy with that group to support this kind of thing. It's just storytelling. It's what we need to do, those of us in our third act, so that we create a better world for the next generation. And I don't want to dominate this because I could go on and on.
Tom, you're not, well, you've already been
Yeah.
in, so you know.
Gene, no cons, all pros.
Yes. RJ?
I think it's a very good idea, and there's been lots of, national, the three people who were fired or who resigned early last year have been very vocal, and I think they would be people that would be good to talk about. I think that the one problem with talking about CDC is that a lot of the things that were done initially are being reversed, and there are a lot of people who were impacted by it, who may want to, protect themselves by not by not telling stories, because I think that there's a chance that there are people who are being brought back in as we speak. So that's the main thing. And I know another potential source of people it would be there are some other groups that are collecting names and I guess stories from people who've been involved, and so they may be a good link to a sizable number of people. We'd have to look into that. And there's also a CDC alumni group that started out as a small social group, years ago. I think it's now 1,500 people, and they're very active, and so it should be possible to get the word out and try to find people who really would be interested in doing this. But it would require some time and effort to get to the right people.
You raised some excellent points, and I think we are going to have to be very sensitive to, I mean, if we want detainees, illegal aliens, whatever, people who've been suffering there, we're going to have to be very sensitive because they're not necessarily going to want to show their face and be arrested as soon as they walk out the door. So fortunately, we've got some people here, Hannity and Audrey in particular, who are very careful about that and who can finesse that, I hope. I would also say that, if we want a diverse range, we're not in one storytelling event needing 50 to 60 people. On the other hand, if we get 40 to 50 to 60 people, those are all potential storytellers on the website. So we can, help expand in both directions. So I have faith that we can find a diverse, select group of people willing to tell their stories. And the good thing about working with older folks is we don't care as much. I remember somebody in third act saying, hey, if we get imprisoned, our time is short. A life sentence doesn't last as long as it used to. Melanie, were you about to say something?
I was going to say what I really love about this is that it really gets to values, and I just feel like we have so much in common. That's why the deep canvassing is so important, and so when you hear these stories, you start thinking about your values, and then and I like the idea of sort of the follow-up facilitated conversations, of finding that common ground. And I also love the idea kind of the house parties. That's something that we are hoping to do a lot of at Third Act. And I like the idea of kind of like some little smaller venues where it's even easier to have those conversations about values. And Audrey, you said something about follow-up or conversations after that, discussions, kind of guided discussions or facilitated discussions. So I'd love for that to be part of it.
I love the thought of having an evening of storytelling as a kickoff for a series of house parties and launching and
like that.
Just a thought.
Got to make sure you serve food or have it at a brewery.
100%.
Wild Heaven has been really great about even, how shall I say this, making space available at a very reasonable cost, if any, for these kinds of things.
Well, are there any other kind of challenges that any of you see before we get into starting to try and share?
I do have a couple. One, I think this is overall a great idea and the partnership is trying to do this work, so we definitely see the value in it. And I did put in the chat, I think if we're trying if you're trying to do something bigger, it might be helpful to do few smaller events with like niche groups. You can get them bought in. That helps spread the word to generate a greater turnout for something bigger. There's two things. One, I would think about balancing personal stories with scale of impact. I think it can be easy for people sometimes to write off an individual's experience as a singular experience rather than something that's happening constantly and pervasively. And then the other thing is like, are there core themes, issue areas, topics that Georgians really care about that maybe we could hone in on to make this a little bit more focused? Those were a few of my thoughts.
Excellent, excellent reminders. I can tell you right now, data centers are one core area that we could do. I can also tell you that, like, when I approached GIPL, the Georgia Interfaith Power and Light organization, highly respected, their interest was piqued, but they kind of had to pull back and say, oh, if it were focused on climate, we could support it, but we've got to keep our eyes on climate and not all of these other issues. So it may be that when we think about this further, we may have several smaller forums, like you said, and eventually come together. I'm guessing, Jim, one of our big goals is to have some events in time to have an impact on the midterm elections. Obviously, the primaries May 19th. It's going to be we're not going to be able to pull this off probably before then, but also to have it early enough before the midterm elections that others can pick up on it, other states, other groups, and carry it forward to have a much broader impact than just us in Georgia. Is that pie in the sky optimism or a fair description, Jim?
It might be my pie in the sky optimism, but yeah, I would love to see something happen by July, by early July or late June, so that we could inspire others to follow our example before the midterm elections. And I realized in discussing this so far and in the conversations that I've just been hearing that something I missed was the importance of kind of getting outside the staunch anti-Trump, I won't say cocoon because we're not in a cocoon exactly. It's a pretty giant tent at this point, but trying to reach people who are not already with us is important. And I think that the location of the event is part of that. It would be good probably not to do it in a predictably blue area. I think it might be helpful to have some ex-Trump people as storytellers, maybe even an ex-Trump person as an MC or host person. And I'm thinking maybe a couple of groups as co-sponsors. That might be a way to overcome, for example, the objection you cited, Jean, from that Interfaith Power and Light group. They might be willing to come in as a co-sponsor with a more democracy-focused group of an event that had stories of multiple kinds. I very much like the idea of doing an event, a public event, and trying to making it a kickoff for a series of house parties. Anyway, those are just the thoughts that all this stirs in me immediately.
As well as, I pardon my diplomacy here, but people who have suffered long term under Trump, but then leaving room for who knows what Trump's going to do in the next few months that will cause great pain and suffering. So, next steps. Do we have any thoughts, knowing that we want to, I mean, the other beauty of this whole project is that it shouldn't take a tremendous amount of effort to gather people to find a location. We've got some experts here, and we've got a good pot of money to pay for the catering that will attract the people. Any thoughts on where
Yes.
we have? Yes.
So stepping outside the blue bubble, but you don't want to go too far outside the blue bubble. So, I was thinking there's a nice venue in downtown Duluth called the Red Clay Theater, and I think they're fairly reasonable people. So that might be a good area because that is got a lot of folks that may be like your neighbors, Gene.
Mhm.
But the other thought that I had, which was kind of a long shot, but we have this gubernatorial candidate, Duncan, who's a former Republican who is now a Democrat. And if this is something we could attract him to, because he is, again, somebody, I mean, he was impacted by the Trump regime enough that he switched parties. He's may not be everybody's cup of tea, but he is certainly an example. So I just thought, what about Red Clay Theater with Jeff Duncan invited to come and speak and start it off? It would be a good place for him to stump and tell his story about why he switched, and then that launches into other types of storytelling.
Of course, Jeff Duncan will either move on after the primary in his race for governor or be out of the race altogether. But either way, I love the idea of working with that because I would also love to hear a lot more about why Jeff Duncan decided to switch parties. I know there's a lot of people that write him off as a turncoat, but I'm not one of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to learn in there.
Yeah, the
You
others
want
are
media
there.
coverage? Oh, sorry. I was gonna say you
Oh,
want media coverage, get Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Ah,
That's such an excellent idea.
yes.
I love that idea.
I mean, where she goes, the media follows, and
Oh my God, I love that idea.
yeah. I mean, who would think that we would all be like 8 months ago
know.
that we'd be sitting around saying this? But
And she'll go on about MAGA and what MAGA really means, which would be fine.
yeah,
She can
yeah,
do her thing.
that's just digging the hole deeper.
The other, another thing I'm thinking is that I like the idea of the interfaith thing keeps coming up, sort of having those people as our leaders or, the conveners, kind of different interfaith folks and groups, because it does, it leans into the values, and it also helps to make it more human centered rather than politics centered. And then
And more nonpartisan. Yeah.
right. And then also I think it's a great opportunity for intergenerational stories, because in thinking about the future and what damage is Trump gonna do. I mean, oh my God, it's the young people who are gonna really be suffering because we're gonna be dead. But
And
I
there
feel
are
like
interfaith children. There's a interfaith children's movement here, and Interfaith Atlanta has like an interfaith youth sort of cohort as well.
and also with college campuses, that's a great way to get turnout. I was thinking maybe of a college campus even as a venue, um, because they've got some, nice areas. Sometimes
Melanie, on that, we heard from Atlanta Metropolitan State College. That's a mouthful, and I think that's the right word. But they were interested in hosting one of our speakers for an event. We've had to push back the date. We're still kind of figuring out topics, but depending on how that goes, they might be a good partner for this kind of work.
oh,
I
that's
will
great.
say that they are in a blue district. They are located very much on the minority side of downtown Atlanta. So that, I mean, maybe two events, because I think that would be an excellent draw for many of them, but many that would find that convenient to go to don't need to hear the preaching as much as others who are in the outskirts. So,
Well,
and I
maybe we could just
the idea of a college, but not, I mean, the major universities are also in the downtown area, which is the bluest area of Atlanta. So,
Kennesaw State hosted the National Storytelling Conference last year. So like storytelling is sort of on their wavelength.
nice. Maybe we could rent some vans to send around to the local universities and bring students off campus to these events.
well, it's also going to be summertime. So,
Oh, right.
but they may be looking for things to do. Yes. We've got some great ideas here for venues. We've got a tentative time. We got some intriguing thoughts on speakers. And we have about 10 minutes left. How do we want to proceed with this? Do we want to get everybody's buy-in and do some research and come together in the very near future to discuss some specifics, or does anybody have better ideas? I mean, would you be willing to check out some of your sources, Audrey, for
Oh.
locations and
Mhm.
also for coaches in helping people prep their stories?
Yeah.
RJ, you've got great contacts. I mean, I foresee, I don't know how much each of you knew about this prior to today's meeting, but if you're pretty much brand new to it, I know that it may take a little bit of time just to discuss it with others and find out who some good key people are. I will reach back out to Gipple unless somebody has a really good contact with them, the Georgia Interfaith Power and Light, and see if they might reconsider. Who are some of the other organizations that you all could reach out to as potential co-hosts? Obviously, Third Act. I'm going to put my coordinating committee on the spot, since Bill is one of them right now, and say that, you know, this is very much in line with Third Act, and we should be a co-host. But what other groups here in Atlanta?
I know Cody I just wasn't sure he
Okay.
was still executive director of Gipple, but yeah.
Yes, that's who I spoke
Yeah.
with initially.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if coming from a separate angle, please.
I mean, I think if we could have one individual, I mean, if stories are, I wouldn't make these stories that much longer than 7 minutes. I mean, I'm thinking of the Moth kind of format, 5 to 7 minutes. One story could be about somebody who, I don't know, wanted to put in solar panels and I don't know. Or, they work a lot
Absolutely.
with faith communities as well.
There's a lot of frustrated faith communities that want to be more green, and I
Yeah.
mean, so whoever mentioned that we want personal stories as well as broader stories, a church who doesn't have the money but has the right heart to be more sustainable and whatnot
Mhm.
would be a good example. Let's also think about a facilitator. I know with the Moth, the gentleman who has been the kind of the host and the facilitator, granted, he's got a great sense of humor, but he adds tremendously to the evening. And
Sound good?
I'm not recommending that we reach out to him, but finding somebody who could, tie these stories together, build confidence, get the message in a subtle way or not so subtle way across. So think about possibilities there. They do not have to be professional. I don't know, maybe Jeff Duncan or Marjorie Taylor Greene, you know.
I don't want to give her the mic for the whole night.
That's true. We would never hear the stories on. But I guess what I'm saying is think outside the box a little bit, you know. Are you all game? Are you all part
I
of
have one,
this?
I just want to contribute one general idea, which is that I would imagine it would be a good thing to try to meet in a couple of weeks and use the time in between to bring some more people into the next meeting.
That's exactly what I was thinking too, Jim. And do some research in our own networks, and like Audrey, if you can reach out to GIPL again.
I've got some other ideas too. For
And we
organizing.
will have this recording. I don't know if you would want to share it with somebody to bring them in, or whether, you know, but use your judgment.
Does
But
anybody
yeah, this is,
know Carrie Glover? Has anybody on this call know Carrie Glover?
Who's that?
Okay. She was a reporter, a journalist in Georgia for many years. I worked at Sierra Club with her in DC. I'm not sure where she is now, but I'm friends with her on Facebook. I can see what she's doing if she still has contacts or whatever.
yeah.
And if you want to brainstorm, post this meeting, I'm open to it as well. I could other organizations, individuals.
Right, you said a few things, Audrey, that I want to get back to you about offline.
Okay.
And I want to know if you're familiar with Third Act Faith. They could
No.
use some of your energy. Tonight they're having a session with Bishop Mary Ann Buddy, the one who gave the inaugural speech and lectured Trump. And so you could join that and
Ooh,
maybe meet some of the people.
Please
Yeah.
invite me.
Yeah.
Trying to go to a salsa dance and bachata class tonight, but I would conceivably.
If you go to thirdact.org,
Okay.
on the national event and look under events, you can see it. And if you register for it, you'll get the recording of it, even if you don't go to it.
The other thing I wanted to mention is I'll be attending the Religion News Association conference. It's meeting here in Atlanta starting Thursday through Saturday night. So there may be some other contacts there. Some folks both in Georgia and outside.
Awesome.
Okay, so
Can I have a question about time frame of what people talk about? Because there are people, say at CDC, who spent a career, who are now retired, who spent a career, establishing something, doing a huge project. For me, it was working on folic acid to prevent neural tube defects, and I spent almost all my career doing that, including spending 5 years in China. I would not want to talk about that personally, because that actually could be on the chopping block from what RFK is doing. So I would not want to do that. But there are other types of projects like that where someone can talk about what's been taken away, but they also can, I think immunizations is a good example of saying what's been done now is going to be, predicting the future. I mean, my wife did a lot of work on vaccine preventable diseases, and people are really talking about, what are we going to do in the next pandemic, and what are we going to do? Measles is roaring back, and all those sorts of things. And so it's not a personal story of what happened to me or to a personal story, but trying to those stories about the future don't really, probably don't sell that well or make that much of an impact. But anyway, I think it's good to just think about what kind of time frame makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. And those stories can be framed, especially if they're told by people of my demographic, in terms of our children and our grandchildren, actual or proverbial, and what we are visiting upon them.
We are coming upon a time when several of us have other commitments, so not to rush, but we need to rush. Is this a good time to meet in 2 weeks? I know for us, maybe it is for some of the others, and we will also send around a list of those of us on this today to allow for, communications in between. We've got Audrey, who's a significant player in the faith and storytelling field, RJ in CDC, Hannah D in the government, federal government workers, four of us in the elders arena. David, is there a specific kind of population or group that you're particularly well connected to?
I'm particularly well connected to LGBT trans community. I know
Excellent.
a lot of people in that community, so I could certainly be of help there.
Okay. And if you feel like you've got enough, it wouldn't hurt also to start reaching out to the Red Clay Theater or some of our connections to see if they're even open to such. Granted, it's nonpartisan. We want it to be nonpartisan, but they may, a year ago, they'd be very cautious. Maybe they'll ease up on it a bit now. So 2 o'clock on the
Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo, if that doesn't interrupt anybody's celebratory plans for the day. You can get started while you're in the meeting as long.
Right.
Does that make sense? Jim, any good last words? We greatly appreciate you bringing us together, and David in particular too, your connections. And if each of us tries to bring one or two more representatives from organizations or populations not covered yet, that would be a big.
Yeah, if anybody has any agricultural farmer type folks, rural.
Excellent thought. Yeah.
I already have a Georgia farmer in mind who wanted to build solar panels and was frustrated by the decimation of the Inflation Reduction Act.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm hearing more and more about that as well. So that would be timely. So we're going to have a hard time figuring out which stories are most compelling, I have a feeling.
That's where I feel my contribution lies, both in finding persuasive storytellers and in helping them shape their stories.
And overseeing all of this. Yes, I appreciate.
I would envision making a trip down your way for a week or more before an event that we're holding in order to work with some of the storytellers.
And we have accommodations for you.
Excellent.
All right. Thanks.
Well, thank you, everybody. We will see you in 2 weeks and possibly hear from you. We'll send out minutes before then. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you
This
all.
is
Thank
exciting.
Meet everyone. Bye.
Really.
Bye.
Thanks.
I'm just hanging in there to thank you two so much. And Jean, that was great. It would not have gone well if I had tried to be the facilitator as well as the pitcher.
Well, I think there are some excellent resources here. So, yeah. And if we can keep Melanie engaged, who knows what resources Third Act Central will be willing to provide.
I'm going to go back to Bill McKibben and Vanessa Arcara, the president of Third Act, because I've had conversations with both of them about this, and I do think they're interested in some kind of formal, some kind of practical contribution to making an event like this happen. So I think this is a good moment for me to see if they will step up and offer something. It might just be some money, I don't know. But I think that, I think that they would probably actively encourage Third Act Georgia if your coordinating committee decides you want to put your name on something like this. I think they might be supportive.
Let's just say I would be very surprised if we didn't, given that I'm the facilitator of the group.
I like the
not
sound of that.
I have support here with Bill. But no, I jump into this thinking that it is so appropriate for Third Act. So, they're aware of it. They may not be personally actively involved, but we love putting our name on things. So, you can count on that. And I think it's appropriate, but I love going forward, and I like the idea of it launching other projects of various sizes. So
Yeah, me too. So when you have some notes ready, I'll be happy to. I've took some notes myself to fill in anything that I see that is missing, if I think there's anything missing, and then maybe we can send them around along with an announcement of the intention to have a meeting in 2 weeks. And then as we talk to people, we can sound them out on whether Tuesday at 2 p.m. is a good or bad time. And if we run into people who are genuinely interested and seem like they would be valuable additions, and it's not such a good time, we can think about rescheduling or having an additional meeting or what have you.
sounds good. Sounds perfect. Thank you. And this is exciting. I too loved, I think it was Tools of Resistance storytelling. I like that term. So we've got a great group. I look forward to meeting again, and you'll be hearing from us in the meantime.
Thank you so much again, Jean.
Thank you,
More
Jim.
power to us.
Thank you for your persistence. We're all so busy that it's easy to let things drop if people don't show consistent interest. I find that myself. And so it pays off. So
Bye for now.
we're launched. Okay. Take care. Bye.